Welcome back to Kings of the North. Lesmerises and Bill Landis drafting quarterbacks today. Bill Landis. We're going to figure out who the best quarterback situations in the North are. 28 teams. We're going to draft them. It's based on how good we think the quarterback play will be in 2025. We have like how many transfers are in, how many homegrown guys, how many guys have a ton of starts, how many have practically no starts. We're going to break it down a little bit so people can contextualize where their quarterback fits into this picture. And then we might do a little bit at the end of like, is there any Southern quarterbacks we should be scared of? And we'll have a draft there, and I'll let you pick Carson Beck because I'm not picking him.
Okay. That'll probably be the way that it goes. But this was fun. I'm looking forward to the draft, and I like the opportunity to refresh myself on exactly what's going on with all these quarterback rooms.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty it's an interesting like even breakdown of like there's a bunch of super veteran guys, there's a bunch of kind of young guys, and there's a big group in the middle. There's about a third transfers just this year, a third of guys who transferred previously, and a third of the guys who are homegrown and who always have been at their school. So like there's not one way to get quarterback right. There's a lot of ways to get quarterback right. And I think a lot of schools are in. Yeah. Don't you think? I mean, I looked at it. I mean, there's just enough veteran. There's not a million veteran guys coming back in the North at quarterback, but there's enough.
Yeah.
Rocco Becht at Iowa State, and Jake Retzlaff at BYU, and Drew Allar at Penn State, and Jalon Daniels at Kansas, Neighbor Johnson at Kansas State. There's just enough guys like that I think there is a foundation, and there's some good transfers, right? Some guys, Mark Gronowski at Iowa and Fernando Mendoza in Indiana, guys who are going to, you drop them in and they make their teams better. And then there are some dudes. There are some young dudes who we want to see, whether it's Dante Moore at Oregon or Damon Williams at Washington or Julian Sayin at Ohio State or when Bryce Underwood, if and when this year he plays at Michigan. It's like it's a good mix, I think. But I feel like there's very few, like I have no idea what they're doing.
No, I would say that there are maybe two that fall into that category. And maybe like 1.5, perhaps. But no, I actually, like, given like how volatile the position is now in college football, I think a number of our teams, most of our teams, should probably be feeling pretty good about where they are right now.
Oh, I'm super interested to see I think I know who the one team is. I'm wondering who you think the other half team is. Oh, this is good. But because here's the thing. You don't always get quarterback right. And sometimes you bank on somebody. So the best thing is to have a plan for probably two different plans at the same time. Somebody in the portal who should help you, can help you. You're planning to help you, but if it doesn't go exactly right, you have somebody who's been there who can be ready, whether it's a young guy, whether it's a guy that you thought of more of as a backup. But if you have a plan, the thing that would make fans panic, and we would tell you if it's time to panic, if you get to this point in the season and you have no idea, there's no plan, right, for a team. And that does happen sometimes, I think. I don't feel that very much in the North.
Certainly less so than this time last year. There were a couple, I think, teams this time last year when we did a similar exercise. It was like, I don't know what you're doing. One of which was like BYU, who were like, oh, they're fine. But yeah, I think you're right that there's no one, I think, totally sort of in the wilderness trying to figure out who their quarterback's going to be right now.
Because I will say, even the team that I was like, I have no idea what they're doing. Then when I was looking, I was like, oh, actually, there's kind of somebody in here that actually could be a little bit of a thing. I think that they were even better off, and there's multiple. Even the least set quarterback situation in the North has multiple possibilities, and I think a real possible answer. And that, I think, is the worst one.
Interesting. Okay.
I
look forward. I look forward to you spinning that one. Okay.
Ooh, I'm a spinning. Oh, I can spin. No, I'm like Carson Beck. Carson Beck. I wouldn't take him if you gave him to me for free. And then I'm like, oh man, you just wait. You wait and see what some of these like bottom tier Big Ten teams have for you coming. Oh mama, they got something for you. They don't need Carson Beck. It's kind of where I am. I also will say, since we last spoke, I was on a bus for 38 hours back and forth to Florida. So I'm just feeling good to be not trapped in a bad way. Not trapped in a bad way. We went to Buc-ee's. Have you been to a Buc-ee's?
I had my first Buc-ee's experience on the drive from Columbus down to Atlanta for the national championship game.
Okay. I was not aware that Buc-ee's was a town. I just thought it was like a Sheetz. I didn't know it was 900,000 square feet of.
Have you ever seen so many gas pumps in one place? Crazy.
I was hitting the Wikipedia entry on Buc-ee's pretty hard. Well, they only expanded outside Texas in 2018, and now they're taking over the world. Actually, be very, very careful.
They're building one in Ohio. You know that, right?
I know they are. Be careful. That's all I'm saying. 100 gas pumps, clean bathrooms, and people chopping up brisket right in the middle of your gas station. I don't know what to tell you. I think it's good, but it also feels like a little bit of a plot. And it's coming from Texas and it's spreading through the South, and now it's leaking north. Don't get wooed and fooled by brisket in your gas station. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. It's good, but just be careful. That's all. Just be careful, like with anything. Are the SEC and Big Ten taking over college football and ruining it? They are meeting this week. We're going to open this. We're going to do inbounds, out of bounds. Talking about a couple issues. This is based on reporting by Ross Dellinger at Yahoo Sports, who dropped the story last week. Heather Dinich at ESPN followed up with some more reporting this morning here on Tuesday. By the way, thanks for hanging with us Tuesday and Thursday this week instead of Monday and Wednesday, because if this was yesterday, I would have been doing this show from a bus full of teenagers. And I don't know that anybody would have wanted that. Like we were all gamey at that point. You would have been able to smell it through the show. Like it's just, you're sleeping on the bus. It's the morning. Nobody's showered. You're in the same underwear for 56 hours and you're just filled with Disney spirit, but you're gamey. So we're here on Tuesday. Just like Landis, the SEC and the Big Ten are meeting. The leaders are meeting in New Orleans on Wednesday for the second time in 4 months. Just before we get started here, should the folks be worried? Should the folks be like, oh, this is okay? Like they're plotting the course for the future of our favorite sport.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's great.
It's not great.
The problem is that we don't have a great option, right? Like until there is a true governing body of all of this is what we're left with. So like, I suppose it makes sense that those two are the ones kind of spearheading this, but I would like it better if it weren't happening.
You would like it better. Okay. Let's bring in producer Mike. We're going to do inbounds, out of bounds. We'll eventually have a theme song. Inbounds, out of bounds. Inbounds means you got 1 foot down. You trust it. It's good. First down. Every time you think, Landis, that this is inbounds, a subject, you can signal first down. Let's go. And every time it's out of bounds, then you can throw your hands in the air and you can't believe it wasn't inbounds because it's out of bounds. And we're going to run through a couple topics with producer Mike. Mike, good to see you as always.
Does the Eagles have like a first down chant? Like, do they have that in Philly? Like when the Browns get a first down, which isn't often, there's a chant in the stadium.
No, yeah. When you have a good football team and you have a chant for a first down, it just gets exhausting.
Yeah, right.
I was in line for Hollywood Tower of Terror. Drop ride scares me. I scream no every time I go on it. As the ride is beginning, I scream no, and then I just enjoy it. But then I enjoy it, so I scream no first. There was a guy in line behind us who was in a Jason Kelce jersey, and just in line with him, it was like people would like walking past, be like, "Go Birds!" He'd be like, "Go Birds!" And it would just like throughout. And I just wanted you to be there, Landis, to be in line for a thrill ride with Jason Kelce, a guy in a Jason Kelce jersey.
Kindred spirit. Yeah, go Birds.
Go Birds. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
There were a lot of Eagles jerseys in Florida, and just everybody just like, it's not even, you're just so used to winning now. It's not even allowed Go Birds. It's more like a Go Birds, Go Birds, Go Birds, Go Birds, Go Birds everywhere.
That's just tip of the cap.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right,
yeah.
Mike,
So let's play inbounds.
What are we doing?
As Doug said, if you agree with the statement, said question, it's first down, it's inbounds. If you disagree with it, you're out of bounds. So here we go. We're going to go to the first one here, and it relates to what Doug was just talking about. Inbounds or out of bounds, the SEC and Big Ten should lead the college football playoff discussion.
Can I be both? Can I ruin the spirit of the game and be both? I mean, I guess I'll just say, like, given where things currently are, I'm probably inbounds because I think it makes the most sense. I just I wish there was another option. I wish there was a commissioner of college football to be spearheading all this. And even if that were the case, like, of course, the Big Ten and the SEC would have the loudest voices in the room, and I wouldn't have much of a problem with that. But as things currently stand, like, I don't love the two conferences just seemingly like having carte blanche to do whatever they want when they're shaping the playoff and giving themselves the biggest benefit. I get why the dynamic is what it is. I wish that wasn't the case, but while we're living in that world, I suppose it's okay that these are the two that are leading the charge. I did find it funny that ESPN in one of the articles about this said like there's going to be lawyers in the room, so that doesn't give the illusion that these two leagues are colluding together. And it's like, what is collusion then if it's not this? Because this is, I think, the very definition of it.
Oh, I don't know. I say it's inbounds because, as you said, I don't think there's a better option. And I think some people are ranting. I am not gonna rant about this because, and we talked about this previously, like a couple months ago when it was reported that these kind of things were going to happen. Now we're talking about it again because like we're getting closer to these things happening, and it does matter, right? It does matter. But I just think if you're ranting, the time for ranting is over because this is not what's that? I mean, this is not like the thing that's happening. This is the effect of the thing that already happened. We already consolidated. We already destroyed a conference. We already had Oklahoma and Texas reshape the Big 12. It's over. So now this is what happened after the fact. So to be drawing the line in the sand here, the tsunami has come. You're 4 feet deep in the water. It's over your head and you're drawing a line in the sand. You're like, oh, let me get my foot down to draw this line in the sand. Wait, I can't touch the bottom. I'm drowning. It's done. But who else is going to do it? And I saw someone I heard this argument. I don't listen to other college football podcasts because ours is the best one. And you don't need to listen to another one. So I don't know what people say. But someone said, well, what if the Dallas Cowboys said we make the most money, so we should make the rules? And I say the SEC and the Big Ten, that's already 34 teams. So your two choices, like it's just a bad comparison because it's such a huge body of teams here that you're trying to encompass 68 power conference teams plus the group of 5. If you really want to go down that avenue, then these 34 teams that make the most money are just going to start their own thing. And they're going to be like, fine. Like then you won't have a Dallas Cowboys because it'll be the top 34 and it'll operate as this one gigantic money-making league. You know what I mean? So like I just don't like comparisons like that because it's not the same thing. So I think your only choice here is let the Big Ten and SEC lead the conversation for everybody, or the Big Ten and the SEC are going to break off and have a separate conversation. So I'd rather have this than that. So I'm in bounds.
I would rather have this than that as well. And I saw, like, I've been like listening and poking around to see what people are saying about this. I did see, like Pat 40, like did have a rant on this, and part of it was like dare the Big Ten and the SEC to actually break away. Like I don't think it's an empty threat, and I don't want to live in a world where they actually do that. So if this is the thing that gets us to avoid the SEC and the Big Ten breaking off and doing their own thing, then I will choose to be in bounds with it, even if I am doing so a bit begrudgingly.
Yeah. All right.
What would the Big Ten and SEC breaking away look like to you guys?
The NFL.
The NFL, I mean, they'd still do the same thing during the regular season, and they still could play outside their groups in the regular season. The MAC would still play them. Conference USA would still play them in the non-conference. But otherwise, the SEC would go to 9 conference games, so they'd have a 12-game regular season. They each played 9 conference games. They do a crossover non-conference game with each other, and then they play 2 smaller schools in the non-conference and then have their own playoff. And that's it. And you don't have to argue about the Big 12 and the ACC aren't being treated fairly because they'd be doing a completely separate thing. So, like, I think that's where we are. So to be like, it's not fair. It's like, well, it's better than nothing. So,
yeah.
Inbounds.
All right, so I think all 3 of us are inbounds. Those 2, you guys obviously inbounds. I think I agree with both of you. So now let's pivot off of that. More talk about the college football playoff. The playoff should move to 14 teams in 2026. It will be 12 teams for this coming season, but there is talk starting next season that they could expand it. So inbounds, out of bounds, the playoff should move to 14 teams.
Can I ask a clarifying question on this?
Sure.
If it moves to 16, would that be with the anticipation that the Big Ten and SEC then get 5 automatic qualifiers, or they still get 4 each in a 16-team field?
I do not think that means 5. I think that means 4 SEC, 4 Big Ten, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, right? That's 12.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Group of 5 is 13. If Notre Dame has like whatever the threshold is, they're in the top 14. They're 14, and then it's 2 wild cards. Then it's 2 wild cards.
I meant 16. If they move to 16,
that's what I mean. And then it's 2 wild cards.
Yeah,
so I think it's that if it's 16, there's 2 wild cards. That could be a 5th from the SEC or Big Ten, or could be a 3rd from the ACC and Big 12.
Okay.
So I don't think anyone's discussing 5.
Okay. Yeah, then I'm inbounds on expansion, I guess. I don't love like the 4 AQs for the Big Ten and the SEC, but again, I get it. It may be like a necessary evil to keep this like whole thing intact. The thing I would not want is like a 16-team field where then there are 10 automatic qualifiers from those 2 leagues, and you don't have an opening for a 3rd Big 12, a 3rd ACC. Or I'm not saying there won't be years where there will be a 5th team from the Big Ten and the SEC that are worthy. I'm not convinced that there are going to be 4 teams from those leagues every year that are going to be worthy of making the playoffs. So that's a little bit of why I bristle at the 4 automatic qualifiers. But I'm inbounds on moving it to 14, and I could even be inbounds on moving it to 16 as long as you're not going to give me 10 automatic qualifiers from those 2 leagues.
So I guess part of the point to me on this is 16 better than 14 because it opens wild cards? Because I think if you're at 14, it's going to be 4-4-2-2, which is 12. The group of 5 is 13. And then so all that's left is Notre Dame good enough to be in? If they are, they're in and we're shut. If they're not, there's 1 wild card. But if you go to me, part of this in creating this is 14 specifically. Would you rather have 12 or 16? Are those better than 14, or is 14 okay? Because part of me says you're not adding around. It's just about the buys. And it seems like people didn't even necessarily want the buys because all the teams that had buys lost this year, not only because they were off, but it certainly didn't give an advantage. So all this is getting rid of buys. And then if you're getting rid of buys, why not just go to 16 to give the 3rd team in the ACC and the Big 12 real chances? So then I think I'm out of bounds because if you're going to do this, I just say go to 16.
Well, because in 14 there would still be buys, right? 14, the first 2 would get buys, and then you just play a 12-team first round. Yeah. I'm in favor of getting rid of the buys too. And I think most teams, after going through this one, the thing I don't know is we only have 1 year of data like as a sample size. We're making too much of the fact that all the teams that have buys lost. Like if we did this 10 years. Would those teams win 8 times out of 10 or even 7 times out of 10, something like that? But maybe. But it does perhaps seem that after going through 1 year, a lot of college football coaches and administrators are looking at this and saying there's maybe not a ton of value in having that week off. Maybe they'd rather play and build some momentum. So I'd be okay with getting rid of the buys. But I also I would like an opportunity for more teams outside of the Big Ten and SEC to get into this thing if possible. So give me 16.
So I guess my thing here is I'd rather stay at 12 with no automatic qualifiers. That doesn't seem realistic. If you're going to with no automatic number of bids per league, right? If we're going to a world where the SEC and the Big Ten are demanding and are going to set in place that they each get 4 automatically, and we're now going to a 4-4-2-2-1 world, which is 13 spots, and Notre Dame's the 14th if they're good enough, then I'd rather go to 16. Because if you're going to have that many automatic ones, you leave no opportunity for the 3rd team in the ACC and Big 12. Whereas if there's no automatics, you could have 3 in the ACC this year if you wanted to, if Miami hadn't lost to Syracuse and whatever, right? So that's why I say 14 to me seems like a bad middle ground if you're having so many automatic bids. So I say I'm out of bounds on 14. 12 and 16 are both better to me.
Okay.
What if you were able to pick?
No.
No, you're out.
I'm out. All right.
Yeah.
Right.
Calling the
now I'm looking at the screen, went to the review, and I'm like, oh, like that. My toe was out.
What if the top 2 seeds could pick whether they wanted to buy or not?
I'm not as worried about the buys. I'm more about the 12 or the 16 when it comes to like the opportunities for people. I think the buys are an outcome of that.
Like, do you think Oregon this year, like retrospect to Oregon, they knew they were going to be playing, Ohio State or Tennessee. Do you think they would rather taking a first round home game? Like
I
if they had
think-
the option.
I think people love to talk about this stuff of like, hey, pick your opponent. Let's pick this. I just think that in the end is unrealistic of letting teams pick. I think you make a bracket. So the idea of like, we're going to have 14, but you can choose. I think you're either a top 2 seed or you're not. And then like, whatever, so,
Yeah.
But there's part of this tied to conference championship weekend, which we're also going to talk about, that I think affects the bye discussion. So I'm out of bounds on 14.
All right, he's out of bounds. So let's move to the conference championship that you just brought up. So inbounds or out of bounds, the conference championship weekend should change. Doug, as you mentioned, Ross Dellinger's story, I'll let you kind of summarize in your own words what you thought, but he had a scenario in which he would like to change the entire concept of the weekend.
Yeah, so instead of people are talking about like almost making play-in games, that the suggestion is possibly if you're the Big Ten or the SEC, the 1 and 2 teams would not play on conference championship weekend, and you create like 2 mini play-in games where your 3rd team plays your 6 and your 4 plays your 5. And then that's sort of the winners of those games get the playoff spots. And then maybe the losers are in the mix for a wild card, but it's not to determine your champion. It's all in service because they want to make money. So they don't want to eliminate conference championship games altogether. Because frankly, if you're going to do this, you could just eliminate it, right? Like, what are we doing? But they just want to make money. Dr. Pepper's got to be paid. Or they have to take Dr. Pepper. They built a whole town. Dr. Pepper built a town. Maybe that's what it is. Do you think Fansville is inside of Buc-ee's? That's probably it.
Maybe. This is all to keep Brian Bosworth employed?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So all they did was they rounded up a bunch of people who were already inside of Buc-ee's and kind of were lost and couldn't find the exits. And they said, you live here now. And it's a place called Fansville. So they have to keep that going. So they want to create these play-in games, but it wouldn't be to hang a banner anymore. You're a conference champ. Like that would be determined by the regular season. So, but the point I was making about is now the top 1 and 2 seeds are getting a bye. So they wouldn't have to have a bye in the first round of the playoff because now they're not playing on conference championship weekend. So before, right, Oregon played on conference championship weekend in the Big Ten. Ohio State didn't. So now if you're taking buys away, now you're actually punishing a team like Oregon that had a better season because they're playing an extra game, which actually is not doing that much for them because they're in regardless. And Ohio State got the weekend off. But now, if the 2 best teams get the weekend off, now you can get rid of the buys in the actual playoff. You know what I'm saying? So I'm inbounds on this whole idea, but I think it has to be the puzzle pieces have to fit together because the end result is actually a bye for the top 2 teams, and it's not conference championship weekend, it's conference play-in weekend. I'm inbounds.
Yeah, I think I'm inbounds too because we've already watered down conference championships by reconfiguring these leagues the way that we have. Like you're not even getting a true conference champion because and so if you're just going to use like formulas or whatever to determine who actually wins your league, like I'm at the point where I don't really care how you crown a conference champion because some leagues have 18 teams, some leagues have 14 teams and there's no divisions and the schedules are unbalanced. Just like it's not even like a thing for me anymore. So, and I do agree with it. Like, it seemed like Oregon punished. I don't know if is the right word, but it's like, I bet they would have liked to not have played that game if they could have avoided it in hindsight. So, I think my preference would just be like to make that first weekend of December, just the first round of the playoff. And I suppose if you had playing games, you're kind of doing that already. So I'd be inbounds on this, inbounds on tweaking this somehow. And if it means getting rid of conference championship games as we've known them, I think I'd be okay with that because I'm not even sure they give us a true conference champion anymore anyway.
So I agree with both of you. I'm also inbounds on this, but wouldn't this also make the regular season more important? Like that Ohio State-Oregon matchup from this past year, like that game is huge if the conference champion is dependent and determined on the regular season. Everyone says, oh, the regular season doesn't matter anymore. Well, then that's a way that you can make the conference champion based off the regular season, and the regular season is extremely important again.
No, I think it's a good point because, again, so Ohio State would have been like the 4th Big Ten team this year, so then they would have played the 5th Big Ten team, which would have been who? I don't even know. But they would have had to play like an extra game, like Illinois. Yeah. So like Ohio, so like Oregon, you're in and you get a week off. Ohio State, all right, you're in a good spot to get in.
But you still
now you also You have to play Illinois, which is not a sure thing. And then for Illinois, like Illinois goes from like, we're not really in the playoff discussion. Like we have a play-in game to get in the playoff. Like I think the thing we're doing here, right, with all this stuff, and again, this is, if you have things like this, and we'd have to see what the Big 12 and the ACC would decide to do in these situations, but you're almost creating extra playoff spots by having these kind of unofficial play-in games. So this is another way I think to expand opportunity and reward some of the best teams. I hope they get here on this, because at the moment, conference championship games that everybody's already in, winning doesn't get you that much, losing doesn't hurt you. It's redundant, and I think people figured that out this year.
So assuming the same tiebreakers would have applied, so like Oregon and Penn State just would not have played conference championship weekend. So then I guess, and then Indiana would have played Iowa, and Ohio State would play Illinois. Yeah.
Okay.
And the winner of those two games get into the playoff.
And then I guess it's one of those, like, are those actually guaranteed? Are you taking the decisions out of the committee's hand? Because the other thing you have to be careful about is if there are wild cards, now you can't have conferences gaming the system to be like, we're going to determine our 4 guaranteed playoff teams, but we're actually going to give the advantage to the lower team because we think the higher team's a wild card. You know what I mean? But you'd have to figure out, and this is part of this too. 34 teams in the SEC and Big Ten, 34 teams. That's as big as the NFL, right? And I've always thought we're just going to end up dividing the sport north-south. It's going to be like AFC, NFC, except it's north-south. It would be better. East-west in the NBA, whatever. I think it would be great. But in the end, we're kind of there, but we're not killing the other two conferences. We're not killing them. We're reducing their impact. We're reducing their spots. We're reducing their money, but we're not killing them. And so I thought they were going to be whacked or dropped into another division, right? Another break off, and we'll only have the top 34. I think this in the end is better than that. But if we get to a point, to me, there's not a committee that decides like what AFC teams get in. It's like, well, there's who's in. This is what the standings said. So, but if somehow the Big Ten said, these are our 4, it's outside the committee. These are our 4 best teams. I almost think it's okay to think of it that way, that the Big Ten can do whatever they want. And I'm not so sure it wouldn't be a thing where the Big Ten can say, hey, this quarterback missed the first half of the season, but they've been awesome lately. They're 7-5. We're sending them. We think they're one of our 4 best representatives. They're in. I'm not totally against that. It's a little bit more like an invitational, but it's like, hey, conferences.
But it always has been, yeah.
For the locked-in stuff, but you decide it. Send us your best teams. However you want to figure that out, however you want to maximize your regular season with your corporate partners and your TV partners to get the best games and the best ratings, do all that. And then when it's over, tell us who you're sending. Is that awful?
I mean, I would much prefer that be decided on the field. Like, I don't want use whatever arbitrary metric you deem fit to send us your best teams. Like, I think what happens on the field has to decide it on some level. And like the selection committee, I guess, would get marginalized in this one. I'm okay with that too. It does remove some of the subjectivity from determining who college football's champion is. But like if the Big Ten and the SEC just like went by the standings and put the first 2 in, and then the next 4 play for the next 2 spots, like I think I'd be okay with that. And then the committee's job, I guess, could be like, once you get all of those teams, maybe you have a decision to make on an at-large. Maybe you don't because Notre Dame's in, and then you use your whatever special committee recipe to determine the seeding. But you're not determining who's actually in the field.
Yeah, I think that could make sense. The committee becomes much more seeding, than determining. I think that makes sense. There's a lot of specifics within that, because then it's like, I could argue like now you're creating a world where it's actually, if there is a wild card spot up for grabs, it's almost better for the Big Ten if Illinois beats Ohio State, because then Ohio State would get the wild card probably, but Illinois wouldn't. And that's what I'm talking about, gaming the system. That's way down the road. I just think it's okay for the conferences to have more say about like, these are our teams. We're sending them on behalf of our league, because you make money the more your teams advance, right? And then also within that league, I mean, if you just send Ohio State every year, no matter what, Iowa and Indiana and Michigan State and Washington would get mad. So you'd still, it's not like they'd be like, oh, it's okay with us. Ohio State was 4-8, but they have good recruits and you sent them. You still owe something to your conference. You know what I mean? So I do think, anyway, send us your best 4 and we'll let them slug it out.
So everyone is inbounds on this one. So now let's go back to the SEC, talking about the expansion. The SEC, inbounds or out of bounds, should play 9 conference games. As we said earlier, if 4 playoff spots are guaranteed to the SEC, they seem more open to this and adding a conference game. So inbounds, out of bounds, the SEC should play 9 conference games.
I think I'm out of bounds on the specificity of 9. I am inbounds on uniformity, and but my uniformity would be I would like everyone to play. Here's my college football schedule. You play 10 conference games. You play 1 out of conference Power 5 opponent, and then you play whatever regional, whoever you want to play, G5, even FCS. I frankly don't even care all that much. So that would be my preferred conference. But so if this question is about uniformity specifically, then I'm inbounds, but I would prefer 10 over 9.
Okay.
So Bill's out of bounds.
I think I'm inbounds on this, but again, I agree with Bill that uniformity is the idea, but also what they always claim that they don't want to do is, well, if we play more conference games and we're beating each other more often, that's going to hurt us in the end because we're so good. And the guaranteed spots eases that concern. But then also, like, the biggest reason that people like us talk about the SEC playing 8 is because there's not uniformity and everybody's competing for the same bids. So if you start to get guarantees, then it's like, I almost don't care. Play 2. I don't care. Play the Citadel every week. You're just going to end up sending the 4 teams you decide, or however you decide it, to the playoff. So, but it's more good teams. It's more good games for fans, right? But I actually think I'm not at 10 because I think the ultimate schedule for everybody would be 9 conference games, a non-conference banger, whether that's probably like that's an SEC Big Ten showdown, and then, however else, then a regional game of perhaps, like, it's not quite at that banger level, but there's history there. Maybe it's a previous conference affiliate that you did, again, all the games we talk about all the time. West Virginia, Pitt, West Virginia, Penn State, Missouri, Kansas this year, games like that, right? And then 1 bye game. Like 1 guaranteed win name. So if that would be my ultimate schedule, I'm good at, but that starts with 9. So I'm good at 9. Also, I don't care what they do. We'll see in the playoff. Do what you want. But if what they're doing, like, I think people automatically react negatively to the guaranteed bids, but I don't think it has to be negative because it's like, we know what the deal is. You're playing for those spots. Now do whatever you want to do. You ding dongs. Like, who cares? We'll see you. And then, like, we'll see whoever's process helped create the teams most ready to compete in the playoff. And the rest of the time, you suck it. I don't care. You can cram it up your cram holes for 12 weeks. It doesn't matter. See you in December, you ding dongs. Okay, sorry.
Okay, he's in.
Yeah, Doug says he doesn't care until we get to the season where Alabama plays Campbell 9 times.
Yeah, they got Campbell, the Citadel, Coastal Carolina.
Yeah. 8 in Tuscaloosa, 1 at Campbell in a 9-game series for the entire regular season. Yeah.
The biggest game is at Liberty.
Yeah. We know what that would make? Miserable Alabama fans. Fine. Make your fans miserable. Make your fans hate you because you've taken your once proud, great program and wussed out for 3 months. Great. Congratulations. Good luck wussing out. And then we just come on here every week and tell you to cram it. Alabama beat Campbell again, 73-6 this time. What's your cram meter rating, Landis? I can't wait for that cramometer.
All right, well, let's move on to the next one, which we've kind of already hit on, but let's get to it here. Inbounds or out of bounds, the SEC and Big Ten should play a series every single year, kind of like how they do in basketball with the Big Ten and the ACC and various conferences. So inbounds, out of bounds, the SEC, Big Ten should play an annual series.
Yeah, inbounds.
Doug, oh, okay. Bill, you go ahead.
Yeah.
Bill's in.
Of course. Why not?
Yeah.
What's the downside?
I have 3 feet in on this. I grew an extra foot just to
all the way inbounds.
Yeah.
And we talked about this. We talked about this a lot last time we talked about this, but I do think even you're playing 16 games, you could right? Like you sprinkle them out over the first 3 weeks. You play 5, 5, 6 or whatever you do, right? Like you do, like it wouldn't have to just be one weekend. What you create is an awesome September where there's cool games that matter. This is North versus South. This is the heart of what we are about on this show. I think it would be fantastic. And again, if you sort of ease the pressure of the playoff race, then everybody's more open to this stuff. TV would love it, but you know who would love it? Fans would love it. Fans would love it. And it would be so easy to execute. And we've talked about it. You just assign, you have a home game this year, you have an away game this year. Fans can know that. And then you announce every March what the bracket is, what the games are. Who's Ohio State playing in the SEC Big Ten Challenge in 2025? We don't know yet, but they're going to announce it on March 17th. I can't wait to figure out, is Ohio State going to play Georgia or Bama or Tennessee again or LSU or Florida? Like, wouldn't that be so fun? Who's Michigan playing? And then who's Michigan State playing? Like, it really matters. Who's Iowa playing? It matters. Who's Maryland playing? It's really like, wouldn't this be an elevator? Wouldn't people be so fired up for this?
I think they would be. I guess my only question with it would be like, is how you determine the matchups. And I don't know that I have a preference, but like if you wanted to do it's like the NFL, like goes by standings, right? If you're the best team in the NFC East, you'll play the best team in the NFC or AFC East, whatever that is. So you could do it that way, but I guess then you'd run into like a lot of repeats. I don't know that people would necessarily complain about like seeing Ohio State, Georgia regular season games all the time, but maybe it makes more sense for it to be a bit of a rotation, or like avoid back-to-back seasons of teams playing each other. But if they went like by the standings, and then like I guess the two Big Ten teams at the bottom of the league are just SOL at that point, but that's okay too, because they don't really deserve to be on the stage if that's the case. So I would love it. I think it would be an elevator. I guess my only stipulation would be that they're played on campus. I don't want neutral site games.
Huge stipulation.
Inbounds for that as well.
But to Mike's point, Bill, they already do it in basketball, and they figure it out in basketball. Like it's not like, oh, who was what last year's first place team versus last year's first place team. It's not guaranteed to be that, but you kind of know who the top group is. You kind of know who the middle group is and who the bottom group is. And it feels like they just do a good job of not constantly repeating matchups, but making pretty equitable games based on how good you are. Yeah. How big your fan base is, right? I mean, I think we have a model for how it could work. I think they could definitely figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, you normally see the big schools play another big school every year, in basketball. I don't think you see Duke playing, Minnesota every year in the ACC Big Ten Challenge.
Right.
But I will say, I just thought of this. What if you did this, and then off of this, whatever conference won more games in said head-to-head series, that conference gets one designated playoff team spot more than the other conference.
I'm not MLB All-Star gaming this thing. No way.
I did have it because I saw at the NBA All-Star game. They said, I'll just put it, whoever wins again gets home court advantage in the finals, just like the MLB did.
What if we tried to do something though, where you could get the two commissioners like to go to the last game, or the one that's going to determine it, and then it could kind of be like the Pop-Tart Bowl, right, where they have a thing at the end, but instead of dropping the Pop-Tart into the toaster, the losing commissioner would get crammed. And like that would be like, oh, your conference lost. Here comes the cramometer. How hard are we going to cram it? I don't know what that means. We would have to actually figure out.
Use your imagination.
What cramming means.
There's a lot of time for us to figure that out.
I thought you were going to suggest deep frying Greg Sankey. But I guess we don't have to do that.
Yeah, the losing commissioner gets deep fried and is eaten by the winning commissioner. That's great. Okay.
So back to this, we said the SEC Big Ten, the ACC Big 12 inbounds, out of bounds. They should play a series as well. Big Ten, SEC, if we both all agree that they should do it, inbounds to out of bounds, the ACC and Big 12 should do it as well.
Yeah, inbounds. Why not?
And as we stumbled upon this, Bill, like when I was initially with the rivalry games in October for the Big 12, I was like, what are they doing? And then I was like, wait, I'm an idiot. This is actually super smart. If the Big 10 and the SEC did it like in September, they could carve out spots like in October to do the same thing. Just like in the middle of like, you make your schedules together and it's like, okay, then we're going to have our games where we do the same thing, but it gets its own attention. And then again, like this is fun. Who wouldn't want to watch like Colorado Clemson? It's fun and it's weird and it's different. And one of the best games of last season was UNLV Syracuse, right? Like games like that. It's like, hey, like I didn't know that I was going to be super excited for BYU and Duke, but I actually kind of am because they're both blue. Yeah. So I just think, of course, this would be a no-brainer to do this. And
plus, it would be hilarious to create an ACC Big 12 challenge game that was just Cal against Arizona. Welcome back to the Big 10.
Yeah,
George Kliakoff could be there, like in a cutoff sweatshirt. Just like, man, he'd be walking around everybody being like, I used to be the commissioner and these guys are in the same league. They'd be like, whatever, dude. For real, I was the commissioner. Yeah, no, I think I like this kind of stuff. I like pitting. People noticed. I like pitting areas and conferences against each other. And it's just like you make it a challenge and then you win. And it builds conference camaraderie. And again, I think it would happen. And if you do it the right way and you spread it out the right way, if Minnesota and Vanderbilt was like the 14th game of 16 games in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, and going into that game, the SEC was ahead 7-6, I think Big Ten fans would be like, I've got to watch Minnesota Vanderbilt. They're trying to tie it up. That's the 4:00 game on the third Saturday. I really think that would happen. Don't you? Do you guys think that would happen, or is that a pipe dream?
I we get more eyeballs. Yes, if that were the case, because I think that there was definitely a time during the Big Ten ACC challenge in basketball where that was happening. Like people actually cared about what the record was.
Yeah.
So sure. Yeah, I think it would get more attention. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think if you could add something where said conference that wins the series, it doesn't have to be a playoff spot, but there's something to play for, whether it's, your conference earns, just like your conference earns a money percentage that every team, gets a share of.
But I also think bragging rights and that kind of thing would still matter if we do it right.
It does. We do it every bowl season. The Big Ten's record is this against the SEC. And then you always get the pushback of like, well, this guy, and this guy didn't play. So, all right, well, let's play him in September then.
That's true.
Yeah. And if you played like the last two games were in prime time on the final Saturday, like one was on Fox and one was on a Big Ten type network, and one was on ESPN and the SEC, and one started at 7:30 and one started at 8. But you'd like be showing, the scores from the opposite game, and you'd hope that it was close, or you know what I mean? Like I think you could create incredible atmospheres, and it's a little bit, and I think leagues are looking for this, like the NBA with that midseason tournament kind of thing. Like this is that kind of vibe that I think sometimes if you're just like the way sports used to be, you can think something like this is silly, but to add meaning to something in the midst of a season where something matters beyond just that game has a bigger purpose, but we're still part of the overall thing. I think there's a lot of opportunity and stuff like that.
You're also creating television inventory just for the mere announcement of it. Like,
yes,
for as stupid as the shows are about like announcing the league schedules, like people would be pretty glued into, we're announcing the Big Ten SEC showcase schedule for 2026.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kidding me? Hour-long show in March. I think people will.
Oh my God. We'd do a whole week on that. We'd do what we think it should be. We'd predict what it is going to be. Then once it comes out, we'd go through all the matchups. Who has the edge? What are the point spreads? Who's favored? Oh my God. And it's not about us, but it's like fans would like it and fans would be excited. And it's another thing. And I think you'd remember like, oh yeah, I remember in 2028 when the Big Ten killed the SEC and the Big Ten SEC Challenge. I think it was 12-4 that year. God, that was, I for real. Not the end all be all, but a thing.
There's a lot of TV content you create from. I think of like Champions League soccer, like in Europe, but it's every team in the world. They have that television show for the drawing of the Champions League is huge. You want to see who's the group of death,
Sometimes Madrid is there.
Yeah.
When Shakira's
in attendance,
Kentucky, it's a big deal. Illinois, I'd watch that.
And like last year, like Northwestern and Duke played each other and played like a screwy game that went into Overtime, I
Double
something,
overtime,
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you imagine
Friday
how
night.
like on a Friday night that like, frankly, I don't know who actually cared about that. We cared about it because it was a Northern team. But if that was for a point in the SEC Big Ten Challenge, and it's a Friday night in a 15,000 seat stadium in Evanston, Illinois, and that point counts the same amount as Ohio State, Texas. And we're doing it. That's the thing. A lot of this already exists. We're already playing Ohio State, Texas, and Oklahoma, Michigan this year. We're already doing it. So make it you're just increasing a thing that already exists. And then you're adding meaning to a Nebraska Ole Miss game that otherwise like would be pretty good, but you're elevating that. Oh my, it's such a no-brainer. I think they're going to do it.
I hope so.
Money and interest. I think they're going to do it. They're going to be inbounds. Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti are like this together. Inbounds. And then Brett Yormark and Joe Phillips, Bob Phillips, Todd Phillips. No, he's a director.
No,
Jim
he
Phillips.
made old school. Jim Phillips.
He made old school. Jim Phillips is like, Will Ferrell, we'd like you to be streaking now. Just go ahead, Will. Take it all off. I'm Jim Phillips, director and ACC conference commissioner. They get together and it's okay to copy. Like, it's like, what are we doing? Who's pretending? It's fine.
The copycat world.
Yeah. I guess who would love it? Your fans. Your fans would love it. So, all right.
Yeah.
A lot of inbounds. We're saving
this
sport.
46-minute segment to both conferences and let them watch it. And they don't even got to do the work. We just did the work for them.
But and here's the thing. It's like, again, to rant, like, how dare, like, is it really that terrible? And there's real opportunity here. I think there's real opportunity to increase exposure for the teams that aren't blue bloods, to enhance the enjoyment of fans, to find a world that like has us playing fewer stupid games that don't matter, right? Whether it's in the regular season or the postseason. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. So I think like to come on and be like, oh, how dare they? I actually think it's okay. Because we're in a little bit of the how dare, like the world's changed. People are complaining that like the NBA All-Star game stinks compared to 30 years ago. It does. But you're never getting back to what it was. So now what can you do in the new world? We're never getting back to what college football was 30 years ago. And I think in college football, most of that is good. Yeah. But whatever you're holding on to is gone. So let's try to have the most fun for the fans and the most meaningful games for everybody. So you're not playing stupid games. You're playing cool games that matter. You're giving more teams opportunity, and you're creating a great championship at the end of the year. I think college football is chock full of opportunity right now. And I think if your first instinct is to rant against it, I think you just have to step back and realize, I think there's a lot of ways for it to be okay. You know what I'm saying? Just a little.
Inbounds.
All right, we'll take a break.
That's it.
When we come back, we got to draft quarterbacks. Thanks for producer Mike for keeping the boundaries here. When we come back, 28 Northern quarterback situations. What's the very best one? We'll do that next on KOTN. Doug Lesmerises, Bill Landis. I did a lot of research to like get the parameters for our 28 Northern quarterback situations, but I did basically no research on what I actually think the rankings 1 through 28 are. So I'm worried that you're going to smoke me in this draft.
I would be willing to give you the first pick.
Okay. Do we want to do, like, you know what? Let's get to the draft and then we'll do the parameters afterwards. So I want us to talk about a little bit about transfers versus homegrown guys, super experienced dudes versus young dudes coming up who haven't played much. Some things like that to have some context, right? Career starts, how many years you've been around. I have all that data for our 28 Northern teams, but we just talked a lot about like other stuff. You want to draft? Yeah, let's draft. Let's draft. All right. So Mike's going to keep track on the bottom ticker as we go. So you think this is nice of you to give me
Yeah, because I don't know
First
who to pick
pick.
first, so I'm gonna give you the first pick.
So here's how I'm judging it. If we did this same exercise at the end of the year and said we're going to rank our 28 Northern teams by who had the best quarterback play in 2025, and like, what does that mean to you? It's certainly partially statistical. It's who won all conference awards, who won all American awards, who got invited to the Heisman, also who helped their teams win. So it's not like you're trying, and we probably should do it. Now that we're doing this officially right now, we probably should also do it at the end and then see, okay, oh man, the team that actually got drafted number 1 in the final draft went number 17 in the first draft, right?
Yeah.
Right? Is this explaining this the right way?
Yes, I think so. And that actually helps kind of crystallize a little bit for me too. If you're drafting so that when you look back at the end of the season, you had the best quarterback play. I think that is
that team.
Yeah.
And it's based on, it's mostly the starter, but it's like we're making it the team so that there is a change and the backup comes in and is awesome, right? That's still credit for that team. So, but like if we said right now, who had the best quarterback play in 2024 in the North? Is it Dylan Gabriel in Oregon, who got invited to the Heisman and was undefeated during the regular season? Is it Will Howard in Ohio State in the playoff run they had at the end? Is it Shadur Sanders in Colorado, who's going to be a top 5 pick in the NFL draft? I don't know. All of them are great candidates, but but there's not a right answer. It's still, you can feel differently about it at the end, but it's that kind of discussion. We're just anticipating that discussion. I'm killing time because I don't know. I have a weird stat for you. I don't know who to take. Is there a clear-cut person that most people would take?
I don't know. No, because I think because the most established well-known returning Northern quarterback is polarizing.
He is. And I did the PFF rankings, the PFF grades from this season for like all the guys who are going to be the probable starters in the North in 2025. And like, it is not the guys at the top that you would necessarily think. Like did you do that, Landis? Did you do that sorting?
No,
like,
I didn't.
Like the overall PFF grade. Yeah.
No, not specifically that. No.
I can't wait to tell you who's number 1 among the guys who are anticipated to be starters in the North in 2025 based on last year. I'll take Drew Allar.
Okay.
I'll take Penn State's Drew Allar. And I don't feel like weird about it. I think there's a lot left for Drew Allar. I think year 2 with Andy Kotelnicki will help bring that out of him. I will say among the expected starting Northern quarterbacks for 2025, he's had the 3rd highest PFF grade last year, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. I think once Bo Perbula was out of the picture in the playoff, I think he let loose a little bit and showed that he can run. His yards per attempt is actually pretty good. He's not just dinking and dunking. Made a decent number of big-time throws, certainly increased there from where he was the year before. Did not really increase his turnover-worthy plays through a bad pick at the end of the semifinal. On a 3rd read. Right. And I think that sticks in our head a little bit. And I think we want still had what does too many games mean? This team made the semifinals, but probably too many games where you look at a Penn State win and you're like, man, nice win by Penn State. Why was Drew Allar 13 of 21 for 147 yards? Right. I thought he was good. Right. But his team won. And he probably made a couple decent plays in that game. So I don't want to get held back statistically by the fact that he has more 13 for 21 for 147-yard games than most guys that would be in the running to be picked first among quarterbacks in a big group of dudes.
Yeah, I think he was better this past year than he was in 2023. I still think if you watch him game to game, while he was more aggressive, maybe you want to even see be more aggressive. I think he was held back a bit by what he had. That receiver and the hope obviously is that as a Penn State is better at receiver this year. You can throw the ball to Nick Singleton, you can throw the ball to Katron Allen. I think he'll be good at tight end. I think Drew Allar with another year in Andy Kotelnicki's system stands a very good chance of taking another step forward. So I get anyone who's like, why do we talk so much about this guy? Because if you just watch him play, I don't think he blows you away snap to snap like some other quarterbacks do. But I still think there's a lot of talent there and it's still a pretty high ceiling. And in terms of returning guys, I think he makes sense. So I was definitely torn on whether or not to pick Penn State first, but I think it makes sense that you did it.
29 career starts. He is one of 6 expected starters in the North with at least 29 career starts. So he's in the group of the most experienced guys. And again, like you look at that group of the most experienced guys, and you know, none of them are Caleb Williams or Trevor Lawrence. So Drew Allar's number 1. Would you have done it, or would you have like backed off? You backed yourself off from it, or would you have done it?
I probably would have done it. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2 to you.
Okay, I'm gonna take Ohio State if the goal is to pick the team that we think is going to have the best quarterback play by the end of the year. Like I understand that it is uncertain now, just because like everyone in the room is young and/or inexperienced. I actually didn't realize, like in my mind, Julian Sayin played more this year than he did. He only threw 12 passes, and he was actually only 5 of 12 for 84 yards. It wasn't like he got in there and lit it up. He had one game late in the year. I can't remember who it was against, but he got in, and I felt like he like threw 5 passes that were right where they needed to be, but he was also out there with walk-on receivers, so I think he threw like 4 straight incompletions or something like that. So like one of the few regrets I guess I have about watching Ohio State season is that Julian Sayin did not get to play with the first team offense, and Devin Brown got to play with the first team offense quite a bit. Now Devin Brown's playing at Cal, and Julian Sayin is in line to be the starting quarterback for Ohio State. It is a room that doesn't have has one college start or not even a college start. I guess one game of significant playing time with Lincoln Kienholz having played in the Cotton Bowl against Missouri at the end of the 2023 season. And then there's true freshman Tavian St. Clair. But Ryan Day has done this before, put in a green, highly rated recruit to start as a second-year player, and it's gone well, and I think it will go well for Julian Sayin with all the weapons that he has around him.
He is one of 5. This is one of 5 quarterback situations in the North where the presumed starter has no career starts. So like there's 8 situations overall in the North where the presumed starter has 4 or fewer. That was a cutoff for me because like you're getting to 5 or 6 starts, like that's like half a season. 4 is like, yeah, you weren't the guy. Maybe the starter got hurt and you had to play a little bit. So this is certainly reasonable. I got burned last year by putting too much faith and hope in first-year starting quarterbacks in their second years in college football. So I picked Jackson Arnold in that situation. Jackson Arnold was like the Julian Sayin of last year.
Yes.
Jackson Arnold, Oklahoma. It exploded and he transferred. Avery Johnson was in this situation at Kansas State last year. And like he was good, but along the way, there were some bumps that you would expect from a young quarterback. Aidan Chiles at Michigan State was in this situation last year. Certainly a lot of potential there, but also some bumps along the way. I am now officially reticent. I am not going all in on the second year guys, first year starters who have never really played. Because when I did it last year, I was like, well, Bryce Young did it and CJ Stroud did it. And guys like that had a lot of success. Second year in college football, first year starter, big recruiting pedigree. Here we go. And it worked. I found some guys last year who it didn't work for. So now I'm scared. Is it okay that I'm scared, or do you think I'm stupid?
No, I think it's fair. I think it's fair to be scared. And I would be too, if not for the way that people talked about Julian Sayin this past year, which was like, you could look at him and say like, oh, maybe he's a little undersized and has to put on some weight, or watch some of his throws and think like, I don't know, maybe he needs to keep building his arm strength or whatever. But when people talk about him processing things quickly and seeing the field well, I just think it makes up for a whole lot as you're like trying to learn how to play the position at this level. So I'll bank on that and assume that he'll be fine.
Okay. I do not think that is unreasonable at all. So, okay, I'm going to go now back. It's a different well. I want to say like I'm going back to the well, but I want to be clear, it is such a different well to me, but I'll take Avery Johnson at Kansas State.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Now that he has a full year under his belt as a starter and has elite running ability, and also I think grew as a passer, and I think will not have as many kind of loose plays where he fumbled the ball in the very first play against Iowa State in Farmageddon, kind of for no reason. 25 touchdown passes, 10 picks last year, 15 big time throws, 14 turnover worthy plays. I am going to have to I'm going to have to hold myself back again on this.
Yeah.
But it certainly was not perfect, right? 58% completions. But he really, I think, can be very dangerous as a runner. And there's just like, again, there's some established veteran guys kind of with ceilings a little bit. And then like there's the young guys you don't know. And I feel like this is a like kind of established veteran who still has a huge ceiling. So I'll take him third.
Yeah. I think like Johnson also had almost 700 rushing yards when you take sacks out of the equation. So you have to factor that in. And then I was like, because the completion percentage jumps out at you, and he was actually 62nd in the country in overall passing efficiency. If you look at just raw completion percentage in Northern quarterbacks of guys who played, I think I had like 100 dropbacks or more this past season. Avery Johnson was like toward the bottom. Yeah. But if you looked at adjusted completion percentage, he was more like in the middle, which takes into account like drops or throws that were on target that didn't get completed for whatever reason. Like it still wasn't excellent, but it was more middle of the pack than it was toward the bottom, which I found a bit reassuring. I think we forget how young he is.
Yes.
And that there was going to be some growing pains this past season, but I still think it's all there for him. And this is only going to be the third of what I imagine will be 4 years of him in college football. So I think you're right to still be believing in the hype, because I certainly am.
Okay. All right. So I'm not crazy here. Fourth pick to you.
Yeah. I want to reach for a couple players, but I won't do that. I will go with, I got snake bitten here too last year, but I'll go with Kansas. I'll go with Kansas and Jalon Daniels. I just thought he like refound himself in the second half of the season. Like the first half of last season, he was playing out of his mind and not in a good way. But he's coming, he's coming back for his sixth season. He'll turn 23 in the middle of the year. He's incredibly experienced. I think like being old and experienced matters. 14 to 12 touchdown interception ratio is not great, but it was 9-4 in the last 7 games. Like he has to be better than he was last year. I'm not saying that like what he did last season was good enough, but if you look at more what you got from him in the back half of last season, look at more what you got from him in 2023 when he was healthy, I still think he's a very good, very dynamic quarterback, both running and passing. And among at least the guys who are returning starters, I find him to be a bit more bankable than the rest of the remaining guys.
Yeah, 33 career starts. That's fourth among projected Northern starters. As you said, has been around for a long time, and just like had not. He threw 12 picks last year. Like in 2022, when he burst on the scene, he threw 18 touchdowns and 4 picks. Mm-hmm. Like that wasn't who he was. And I think maybe, I mean, I was going to say, like, did we underestimate it? But we made a huge deal of Andy Kotelnicki going from Kansas to Penn State. And so he lost his offensive coordinator, who was so good that Penn State came and stole him. Right. And so then Jeff Grimes last year. Now Jeff Grimes left and Jeff Grimes went to Wisconsin. So it'll be another new offensive coordinator. But I think there's a decent amount of that in there, possibly. And I'm willing to just kind of chalk it up to a rough first half of the season. So, and you are too. And I think to your point, like what he showed. And by the way, when they started beating ranked teams at the end of the year, it's because he was good.
Yeah, it was their season was like all about him.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I thought Kansas was going to be good. Oh, they stink. It's like, well, the quarterback that people thought was a Heisman candidate keeps throwing the ball to the other team. And now it's like, oh, unranked Kansas beat 3 ranked teams in a row for the first time in program history. What happened? Well, the team that at the beginning of the year that people thought might win the Big 12 with the Heisman candidate quarterback, they look like that now. Oh,
right.
Okay. So if it had been flipped, if they had an awesome first half and a bad second half, I'm not sure Jalon Daniels is the 4th pick. He had a crazy goofball first half of the season, and then he came back to who he really is, right?
Yes,
this is who he really is.
I think so.
And he's done it for 6. This was his 6th season and 33 starts. Kansas State. What a game it's going to be. We're exactly where we were last year, where you are too high on Jalon Daniels and I am too high on Avery Johnson, and we learned nothing. We're exactly back where we were.
I feel
You're
great.
Comfortable. You picked Jalon Daniels 3rd in our Heisman draft last year.
Close.
I said I had Avery Johnson finishing 2nd in the Heisman race. You're comfortable. I'm not comfortable at anything. I'm resigned to to my picadillos. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick Avery Johnson too high. I don't know what to tell you. I am super tempted to be super weird and take a guy, not to do it to you, but take a guy that I know that you want to take.
Don't do it.
Do you want me to do it to you or not? You know I'm going to do it, but it's also I want to talk about the stat.
Okay.
Is it okay if I do it to you?
Sure.
I think it's possibly crazy to do it. Wait, let me just figure out if I'm going to do it. Is this crazy to do it? No, I don't think it's crazy. I'm taking Devin Dampier at Utah.
Wow.
Is that who you thought I was talking about?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've talked about him a lot. Yeah. I don't think I was going to go this high, though.
Okay.
5th.
PFF ratings from 2024 among expected Northern starting quarterbacks for this season. Number 1 is Devin Dampier. 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Wait, do I want to change my pick? Stuff happens. What are you going to do? Devin Dampier, but he's a dual threat. He's going to elevate the talent around him.
He had 1,100 rushing yards last year and 19 touchdowns.
Yeah, by going to Utah. And he was kind of like a one-man show, right? A lot of last year. And that's hard. And I don't think he's going to have to be as much of a one-man show here. But he has a chance to be... He's going to get eyeballs on him now, much more than he did at New Mexico. And I think this could be one of the guys that, the people on the college football shows who don't actually know what they're talking about might be going crazy for Devin Dampier in the first part of this season. Do you think that's possible?
I think it's very possible. He knows the offense with Jason Beck. They're both coming from New Mexico. He'll be behind a pretty good offensive line. I would imagine he'll have better skill around him, even if Utah skill doesn't blow you away. So he was what he was at New Mexico, and I think he stands a very good chance of being better and more efficient at Utah. So I definitely wanted to take him. I don't know that I would have taken him 5th, but I definitely wasn't going to let him get out of like the top 8.
Because but I think we're in the range already of like these guys are good. These are good quarterbacks, but I don't know that anybody's going to be a Heisman finalist, right? So, yeah. So I feel like this is a reach on Dampier, but it's a moderate reach. I don't think it's a crazy person reach.
I don't think it's a crazy person reach. No.
Okay.
And I'm mad that you have him.
Yeah. I didn't do it just to do that. I actually think when we look back at the end of the season and we say, was Devin Dampier one of the best quarterbacks in the North? I think it's very possible the answer is yes.
Yeah, I think so. Because I just think because we've jumped him over guys who are returning starters. I just like some of those returning starters I think are like solid quarterbacks, but we talk about ceiling. I just think Dampier's is higher.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. That's all right. I'm going to maybe reach a little bit here too, because I'm thinking about ceilings. I'm going to take DeMond Williams in Washington.
Okay. We are into ceilings here. He made 2 starts last year at the end of the year, but man, is there a lot to like here. And again, this is Jed Fish's guy, was committed to Fish at Arizona. He goes to Washington. He follows him there. It feels like they had a good plan last year to have Will Rogers as an established guy run the show, but then they got DeMont Williams. They had a role for him, much like the J.J. McCarthy. I think the J.J. McCarthy situation is a pretty good comparison here, right? They got him work all year as a true freshman and then kind of knew it was kind of going to be him in year 2. And so they got that ready even more. And I think even like maybe similar, like, is he going to be a perfect pocket passer? No, but is he going to be like ripping throws on 3rd down? I don't know. Like, I think he's JJ McCarthy.
Yeah. Well, I think, but even like JJ was a cog in a larger efficient machine, and DeMond Williams is going to be, I think, like the engine of this offense for Washington. 8 touchdowns, 1 pick, pretty good for a true freshman, even if he's not playing every snap. His adjusted completion percentage was over 80%, which I think speaks to some accuracy that DeMond Williams has. Can run 370 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. The only thing, honestly, that concerns me about him is that he's 5'11", 187, and he takes a lot of sacks because he scrambles. So he had the 3rd highest pressure to sack rating last year, like in the entire country, among guys who played even a little bit. So he's got to get better there. But assuming he does, because I think that's natural for the growth of a young player, he has weapons around him. He's got, I think, pretty good coaching around him too. And I just think he's ready to kind of be a guy who's in that conversation about like, at the very least, like most exciting quarterbacks. I don't want to say best because he's so young, but most exciting, most watchable, perhaps even at times a bit erratic and crazy, but I think in a fun way.
Okay. I think that's a good pick. I think you and I we both reached a little bit for ceiling, but not crazy reach for ceiling with those last two picks. I'm going to go back with a little bit more of an established dude, but he was really good for a while last year. I'll take Jake Retzloff at BYU.
Okay.
Does this feel about the right range to you? Or is this a little high?
I don't know. It's maybe a little high. So like I was looking at like big time throw rate and turnover worthy play rate. And among the returning guys are like guys we knew who we were going to start. And there's only a couple of them whose turnover worthy play rate was higher than their big time throw rate. And Jake Retzloff is one of them.
He is. He also, some of the stuff just like sticks with me. Just like the drive against Utah at the end of the game to win that game. And just some other, I don't know. I feel like he made winning plays. I feel like he can scoot when needed. This is more, he's like the engine of like an awesome team, right? Like they would not, for everything they did defensively and for the fact that they did have some real playmakers at receiver and two good backs, and Kalani Sitake is like a great coach. Retzloff like was the driving force of what they did, and he's been around forever. He started at junior college for 2 years. He's made 42 career starts. He's like played a lot of football, but I still think there's opportunity for him to sort of like grow into what he is. So I do think I like his playmaking ability, and I'll bank a little bit on the idea of, a year ago he was winning the starting job in camp, and now he's the dude. And so I don't think it's a jump, even with all this football under his belt, to assume he'll come down a little bit on the turnover-worthy plays and might just have a better handle on things. Because I think some of his looseness and playmaking was like a necessary component of getting BYU over the top last year. But now BYU is going to be just like a little more established. They only sent one guy to the combine, right? Like they're not getting wiped out. They're going to be a pretty good team coming back. So I think there's more there for him, but he's already shown a lot. So
he has, and he was better last year than I thought he'd be. So that's a point well taken. Okay, I'm going to go back to an incoming transfer and take Fernando Mendoza at Indiana.
Yeah, I've been wondering. That's a good spot for him. That's a good pick.
He was the number 3 transfer portal quarterback according to 24/7 Sports, behind Carson Beck and John Mateer. And I'm not in. I think I can be convinced pretty quickly that Mendoza might be better than both those guys. He's a good quarterback. He's got multiple years left too. I know we're just talking about 2025, but there's a real opportunity here for Indiana to be stable at quarterback for a number of years. Part of it is what we saw that staff do with Curtis Work this past season, and just like kind of hit the ground running with a quarterback who had some experience coming in. Mendoza has that, and I think it's just like he's a better player than Curtis Work. He's got some mobility to him too, so there's a lot there with him. I don't think they'll skip a beat at the quarterback position with him, and in fact, they might even be a bit better than they were this past season.
I think that's right. I think he's definitely going to be a top 10 quarterback in the North, and I think this is again a reminder of that this is not going to be a 1-year thing at Indiana. Like this might be their deal now, that they just have guys like this and bring them in on a regular basis. So I think Mendoza here. People need to I think our audience knows this, but if you're not totally up to date on what Fernando Mendoza is, Indiana's going to have a good quarterback again. And that Curtis Work was like maybe the second best quarterback in the Big Ten last year, and Fernando Mendoza might be better, I think is all that's true. Right?
Yeah.
Like
he had 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns in like a year and a half of being the starter at Cal. And I think he'll be in a better offense this time.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take one, it's like 3 guys in between here, because I think there's a point that needs to be made based on another previous pick, but I don't want I don't want to let this guy hang around too much longer. So I'll take Rocco Becht at Iowa State.
Yeah.
Does this feel like about the right time for him?
Yeah, I mean, I really like Rocco Becht. He's just in the unfortunate position of losing Jaden Higgins and Jalon Knoll, so I'm not entirely sure what to expect.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to happen, but like Tanner Morgan looked like a really good Northern quarterback with Minnesota when he had Rashad Bateman and Tyler Johnson, and then they left and he stuck around for another couple of years and he wasn't quite the same. And so I think we have to be realistic about that because Higgins and Knoll are awesome. But I don't think that they were like propping him up, right? I don't think that would be a fair thing to say.
I would say maybe a little bit.
He did have a decent number of turnover-worthy plays of returning guys expected to be starters in the North. Most turnover-worthy plays tied for first. Eli Holstein at Pitt, Aidan Chiles at Michigan State, and Rocco Becht at Iowa State with 20 each. But Becht had almost twice as many big-time throws as those two guys. So he's going to be a little bit in this kind of gunslinger mode as well. 3 touchdowns, 270 yards in the big bowl win over Miami, right? I mean, I do think he can play pretty well in big games. I don't know. I think he's a good quarterback, but we're on alert for, hey, you had like 2 receivers who are, we think, going to be big-time NFL guys, and you're missing them.
Yeah, I mean, he's a bit of a gamer, which I think you have to factor into. So like, I think it's right to have him in the top 10.
Okay.
But I was a little nervous about it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, pick 10 to you.
Yeah, so there's a couple... Projecting. Michigan.
Okay. Talk it out.
I think Mikey Keene's pretty good. Like, I don't think he's awesome, but I think he's far better than anything that Michigan had last year. He's experienced. He actually knows this offense. I don't think we've discussed this, but Mikey Keene was at UCF when Chip Lindsey was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach there. So he brings that with him as Michigan transitions a little bit into something different than it was offensively this year. I don't think Mikey Keene is going to be the full year starter at Michigan. I think there will be a point, and perhaps it looks like J.J. McCarthy and Cade McNamara, where they're both playing early in the year. But at some point, I think Bryce Underwood is going to take over. I just don't think they're going to throw him to the wolves and like make him go play Oklahoma immediately. But I think you combine those two guys, Keene stabilizing things, kind of getting the ball rolling, Underwood when he's comfortable enough taking over, providing a spark, and then I think, elevating that position as a true freshman. I'm anticipating Michigan having top 10 Northern quarterback play this year.
If you had to, when would you guess Bryce Underwood makes his first start? In what game of the regular season for Michigan?
I have to pull up the schedule here. Let me see.
But you think he will? You think Bryce Underwood will become Bryce Underwood, the number 1 recruit in this class that had been committed to LSU? Michigan came up with NIL and got this home Detroit kid to stay in Michigan, and he's a game-changing recruit for Michigan football. Are you like 100% on he will become the starter at some point this season, assuming he's healthy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say so. Like, the natural place to look is just like an off week, but I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case. So they play at Nebraska on September 20th, and then they're off the week of September 27th, and then come back to start October with the home game against Wisconsin. I guess it could be there. They also play at Michigan State on the 25th of October, and then play home against Purdue on the 1st. And Purdue seems like a nice team to get your first start against. So I maybe see it like if he's playing somewhat regularly by like to start the year, and then like middle of October he's pushing, I could see them handing the offense over to him fully starting in November, and then he would play Purdue at home, be off, play at Northwestern and Wrigley Field, play at Maryland. Those 3 teams I just aren't going to be good. And then it's Ohio State. So you'd have like a 3-game on-ramp there to get them to the Ohio State game.
Okay. No, that sounds right. And I don't think this is too high. But I'll make a connected pick there because I think like not in the interest of fairness, but I think like, and when you and I don't share a brain, but like if we have like kind of ideas about things about ceiling versus experience and that kind of thing, I think it's fair to not have Dante Moore and Oregon too far behind Bryce Underwood in Michigan. Dante Moore is a Michigan kid, started at UCLA for a few games in the 2023 season, then transferred to Oregon last year, was the backup to Dillon Gabriel and kind of like got groomed to be the next guy. But this is a 5-star quarterback from the Midwest as well. 5 career starts, and that's more than Julian Sayin. And he's a big time recruit, and now he's in his 3rd year of college football. So, I mean, he wasn't that different as a recruit than the way that Julian Sayin and Bryce Underwood had looked at. Probably a little lower on the recruiting pedigree scale, but not that far behind. And he's got a lot more experience than those guys. He started 5 college games. He's been at 2 programs. He watched Dillon Gabriel all year last year to get ready for this. So I think he deserves to be in the mix of these ceiling choices that we're making here.
I am admittedly probably too sort of sidetracked when evaluating Dante Moore by how he looks as a true freshman, because he didn't look good, but he wouldn't be the first guy who was thrown into a situation too early that he wasn't ready for. It's just a little odd to me that he didn't play much this past season. He appeared in 5 games, 2 in the postseason, so he redshirted. He only threw 8 passes. So I'm not entirely sure what he is or what he's going to be. Like, I think it's right to have Oregon in the top half of this conversation, probably, but I don't know that I feel great about that quarterback situation. I wish we would have seen a little more of Dante Moore this season.
Okay. So you think, I mean, it's a tough spot to get thrown in as a true freshman starter at a place like UCLA.
Yeah.
But you thought getting
he took a year off.
Yeah. What do you mean he took a year off?
Like, he didn't, like, it's almost like he took a year off. He threw 8 passes in Oregon this year.
But Julian Sayin only threw 12 passes.
No, I understand that, but Julian Sayin wasn't a guy who had starting experience. Like, it's weird to me that Oregon didn't embrace more opportunities to play him. And then also, like, why are you redshirting a 5-star?
Well, I think I think you can explain a lot of that. Like they had him to begin with. He decided to flip to UCLA. They threw him in at UCLA. He really wasn't ready. It turns out that his head coach at UCLA really was starting to not be into that much into head coaching anymore. And it was like, I don't know, put the freshman in there. Like, that was, in the end, I mean, there's the proof's in the pudding. Like, Chip Kelly was like, I'm out of here. I don't want to be a head coach anymore based on this experience at UCLA, right? Yeah. That was Dante Moore's freshman season, was the year that made Chip Kelly decide he didn't want to be a head coach anymore. So then for Dan Lanning and Will Stein at Oregon to take him in, they knew him, but now they're taking him back. And it's just like, just relax. You don't have to think about playing at all. We're going to focus on teaching you how to be a college quarterback. We're going to Velcro you to Dillon Gabriel. You're not going to have to worry, like, well, what if he gets hurt and I have to go in? Like, we want you to take a year off, right? And reset yourself, because probably too much was put on him in year 1. So now the result is you get year 3 of a guy who's been through it a little bit, but also had a growth period. I actually think it has a chance to be like a tough start that works out into a pretty good situation at Oregon.
It has a chance. I just don't know. I hope it was a growth period.
Yeah, I hope. Yeah. All right. We're missing the guy. Mike's asking if, like, we missed the guy on purpose. There's a guy that we're going to have to talk about why we haven't taken him yet. Maybe you're going to take him right here, but if not, I'm probably going to take him next. So who are you taking 12?
Yeah, I guess I'll take Dylan Raiola. Why did you take him earlier? Because he was bad in the second half of the season.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's
it's not, freshman walls exist. He wasn't in the best offense. Their coordinator situation was very messy. Like, there are a lot of reasons, I think, to quickly explain away why Dylan Raiola kind of fell off a cliff in the second half of the season, but he did do that. 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in his first 5 games, 4 touchdowns, 9 interceptions in his last 8 games. He had multiple games where he had no touchdowns and multiple interceptions. Like, he just looked like a freshman. Incredible talent. There's a ton to work with. I think he'll be in a much better situation this year with Dana Holgorsen calling plays with some of the transfer additions that Nebraska has made. But it's not like he was, blowing our doors off last year playing as a true freshman either. Like, there's a lot of growth there that still has to happen.
Yeah, it's hard. It's like, you almost like, oh, so you'd rather take a guy who hasn't played at all as opposed, like, Julian Sayin and Dylan Raiola are in the same class. They were like 2 of the top 4 quarterbacks in their recruiting class, right? One started a whole year, 1 threw 12 passes. The one who threw 12 passes was the 2nd pick in our draft. The one who started the whole year was the 12th pick in our draft. And their recruiting pedigree was very similar.
Yep.
So playing dropped them 10 spots. And our answer is yes.
Well, it's also the track record of the offenses that they're in too.
So we're not doing this in a vacuum. We're doing like who will have gotten the best quarterback play at the end of the year. Right. And so as much as Ohio State lost an offensive coordinator, it's the Ryan Day offense. They promoted from within. Nebraska's in a complete changeover because what was happening last year didn't work, and they went to Dana Holgorsen, and maybe that'll be good for Dylan Raiola. So I don't like if you Nebraska fans watching or listening to this, I would get it if they're mad that Dylan Raiola is only 12th of 28 in Northern quarterback ratings. But also Nebraska fans watched that enough to know that like the second half of the year wasn't that great.
Yeah.
And you just have to make sure that the stuff around him is in a place to make him have a second year leap. And I think us not picking him until 12, we have a little bit of question about, is he being set up to succeed there? Yes.
Yeah. But I feel better about it going into this year. Like it seems like that was sort of what framed their offseason decision-making is like, we got to make sure we put Dylan Raiola in a better spot. So I think that won't be the case. And like, if we would have just ranked the 28 teams based off the play they got last year, I don't know where Nebraska could be like 20th, like, and now we have them at 12th going into next season. So like, I don't think it's that off base.
Yeah, I think that's okay. And if someone would argue like, well, how come like Dante Moore is not ahead of Dylan Raiola? It's just like, there's some of the situational stuff around it. But I did think, and just some of the stuff like that, Iowa, we're all a product of our experiences, right? Like I was at the Iowa-Nebraska game, and it felt like Nebraska was in control of that game. And maybe if you just had like a little more experience at quarterback and a little more of a set situation offensive coordinator, they got a lead and they just would have found a way to like hold on in that game. And instead it was like, oh my gosh, like this, it felt like a little loose at the end of the game where they're putting too much on him and that kind of thing. And so of course you anticipate it'll be better, but like it legitimately was not great.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second half of the year was legitimately not great. Not surprisingly, but like also we have to take that into account to some degree. All right, we'll do two more picks before we take a break. I have one more guy left that I had been thinking about and I think should be the choice here. And I'm also like, I'm being like, well, are we being fair to this guy? I'll take Aidan Chiles.
Oh, okay.
You're saying this. So this is.
I just thought you were going to pick somebody else.
No, well, Aidan Chiles, again, this is a lot of upside conversation. We loved the Aidan Chiles upside going into last year. I certainly, speaking for myself, got very nervous about it in the middle of the year. And then he helped lead the nice win over Iowa. And then they kind of didn't do anything the rest of the year. But I still think there's a lot here and a very reasonable jump here. 12 big-time throws, 20 turnover-worthy plays, 13 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. I think there's still a lot here, Landis. Does this feel high to you?
Not necessarily. I think there's a lot there. Like I'm on the Aidan Chiles will be a Heisman finalist train before his career is over. I don't think I'll be proven right totally in that regard, but I think there's a lot of tools there. He again looked like a young guy playing for the first time, playing meaningful snaps week after week for the first time. Another guy who took too many sacks, too many games where he was just giving the ball away far too much. He's got to clean a lot up. But there's a lot of tools there too. So like I get it. I thought there's another returning starter who had a much better season than Aidan Chiles last year, who's on a team that's going to be pretty good this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually was looking at our list. I'm getting very nervous about our list. I have like 9 guys, and I'm like, wait, why didn't we pick that guy yet? All right, who are you taking 14?
I'll take Luke Altmaier at Illinois.
Okay, that's the guy.
Yeah. So I guess he comes with the caveat that if we want to talk about losing Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel for Rocco Beck, Luke Altmaier is going to lose Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin, and that's not nothing. So he's got to operate in an offense that's going to look a little different, but he was pretty good this past season. Efficient, 22-6 touchdown interception ratio, 400 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns. You want to talk about like the room too? They added Ethan Hampton from Northern Illinois to be his backup, which I thought was like a sneaky good ad for them. So I like how the room is set up. I think Altmaier it's just like a high floor kind of quarterback. And Illinois is going to be really good this year. So I think he stands to have a solid season, even if he's losing his top 2 receiving options.
Okay. Good pick. Quick break. When we come back, we'll run through the final 14 draft picks for Northern QB situations, and then we'll talk about Southern quarterbacks for just a scooch. All that next on KOTN. Lesmerises and Bill Landis back. There's a couple like veterans who have been pretty okay at various times that we haven't picked yet. But there's one guy, we've talked about this guy. We think he's going to be a big upgrade. So I'll take Mark Gronowski at Iowa.
Yeah.
And the anticipation of what he's done. He has 45 career starts at South Dakota. That's the most of any expected starting quarterback. In the North, offseason surgery, I'm not like it's setting him back a little bit and like getting into the Iowa flow of things. But I think we could argue this guy should have gone higher. He's played a lot and he's been pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, when I was talking about wanting to reach like after the 3rd pick or whatever, he was a guy I had in mind. How much exactly Mike Kirk Ferentz let him cook, I think is like kind of on my mind, but incredibly productive playmaker, 2-time national champion, first-team All-American. Like he's got the goods. Like if he were going to the NFL this year, I think he'd be getting drafted. And he's not. He's going to play at Iowa. So I look back at the end of the year. This might be a pick that stands out as like he was the 6th best quarterback in the North, and you guys picked him 15th wherever we have him. So
yeah,
good pick. Yeah,
I think I said South Dakota State. Could he be the Curtis Work of the North this year?
I think so.
Like, oh, he was good before. He jumped up a level. He's really good, and he made his team really good. And Iowa's in the playoff discussion, and Mark Gronowski is the number one reason why. Why did we take him 15th? Possible, right?
Yes, okay. Yes.
All right, pick 16 to you.
I am going to go to Colorado and pick Caden Salter / the Julian Lewis experience.
And this was another one based on Salter's experience that I thought maybe could have gone higher.
So Caden Salter at Liberty was awesome 2 years ago. And then I think certainly not as good as people thought he was going to be this past year. He went into the portal after 2023 and then went back to Liberty. And then I think his stock cooled a little bit, but I think he can get a lot of that back at Colorado. He's going to give Colorado a different dynamic running the football from the quarterback position. You're not as polished of a passer, certainly as Shedeur Sanders was, and some of the receiver production is turning over there too. I'm aware of that, but I think Salter is pretty dynamic. Will be in a better environment to show off some of that than he was maybe this past season at Liberty. And you also have a pretty exciting backup freshman there too in Julian Lewis. So I don't think that'll be a Bryce Underwood situation necessarily. I think Julian Lewis might actually need a year because he's also reclassified and he's not, 6'5", 240 like Bryce Underwood is. So I could see that being like a true almost redshirt year for Julian Lewis, but Caden Salter's not a bad guy to start this place as the bridge to him either.
I think that's a good pick. And now I'll pick a guy that I think you thought I was talking about a couple picks ago. I'll take CJ Carr and the Notre Dame quarterback room with pick 17. And this includes, we talked about this a little bit the other day, this includes Steve Angeli, this includes Kenny Minchie, but Carr is, again, like not that different than some of these other young quarterbacks who we have taken much higher, in that he has a big recruiting pedigree and he just hasn't played. So we've talked a lot about how much we like him. For instance, in the 247 composite, 24/7 composite quarterback ratings for the class of 2024, Julian Sand, who's now at Ohio State, was number 1. Dylan Raiola was number 3, and CJ Carr was number 6. So Julian Sayin was the second pick in our draft, and Dylan Raiola was the number 12 pick, and CJ Carr is the number 17 pick. So again, like, why is Julian Sayin going second and CJ Carr is going 17th? If people are wondering that, it's not a fair, it's not a crazy thing to wonder.
It's not. Well, we don't know. Do we know how Notre Dame develops quarterbacks?
We do not.
Yeah,
we do not.
And he's also, I think, going to be in a real competition.
Yes.
I don't
Which
know.
is that a bad thing or a good thing?
No, it's not a bad thing, but it puts him in a different conversation than the other guys you were talking. Certainly Dylan Raiola, who's a returning starter, but even Julian Sayin will be in a competition too. But like, he's the favorite to win the competition. I don't know that CJ Carr is the favorite, or at least he's not as much of a favorite as Julian Sayin is. Like, I think Steve Angeli is pretty good based off what he did this past season. And I've mentioned before that I like Kenny Minchie quite a bit as a pretty athletic, exciting quarterback. So, I mean, if I had to pick who you think's gonna be the starter, I probably would pick Carr, but I think he's going to get pushed a lot. And I think there could be, if Carr doesn't play a great game as a young guy, they're going to be like, hey, let's give Angeli a try. Like, I'm a little bit on alert for some push and pull there with a quarterback room that has a couple of seemingly viable options, but I think it'll be decent quarterback play either way.
Okay. I think here at pick 17, we are still in the range of this quarterback situation should be pretty good.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think we're out of, like, we are not into the worried about quarterback situation part of the draft at all, in my opinion.
I think we're still a few picks away from that. Yeah.
CJ Carr and the Notre Dame situation being 17th here. I mean, I think you could probably argue them as high as 6, really couldn't Notre Dame and CJ Carr and Steve Angeli be as good as DeMond Williams at Washington, or Jake Retzloff, or Fernando Mendoza, or Dante Moore, or Dylan Raiola? Yeah, but I think we have like a big, healthy middle, just like me. A big apple-bottom chicken legs, big, healthy middle, which I think is good for Northern football.
I think that's right. There's a guy I want to reach on, but I'll show some restraint and not do it. We have a couple returning starters left. I'll take one of them. I'll take Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati.
Yep. Which, again, like, I think Cincinnati's very happy with Brendan Sorsby.
I think they are too. And I liked the move when they added him last year. I thought 2 years ago in a bad Indiana offense, Sorsby showed some upside. And another guy that probably puts the ball in harm's way a little too much. He had 8 big time throws and 13 turnover worthy plays. That's not good. But an 18-7 touchdown to interception ratio is not bad. He'll run. He had 9 rushing touchdowns, 522 yards, sack adjusted. He's big, athletic. I think will grow in that offense. And I think be a better player next year or this coming year than he was this past year. So I don't know that he has like the ceiling to like push himself maybe in like top 10 conversation, but I think the floor quarterback play wise for Cincinnati is probably like middle of the pack in the North.
Okay. I'll pick a guy next who's also a returning starter. PFF rankings is like, has some very similar stats to Brendan Sorsby. And I think you could argue that this room should be higher. It's Wisconsin, with Billy Edwards as the presumed starter, the starter at Maryland last year, and Danny O'Neal, who was his true freshman, the only other true freshman in the Power 68, along with Dylan Raiola, to start last year. He's transferred to Wisconsin. It's an upgrade in the room. I like that they have Edwards to be the veteran guy who can play, and again, had some really good moments at Maryland last year, and that they have O'Neal set up for the future. And I think when you combine those two together, again, if you want to make an argument they should be higher, like, I think Wisconsin's, for as much as that is not working at Wisconsin, I think their quarterback situation is in good shape.
I think it is. I think Billy Edwards is better than the transfer options they've had the last couple of years. So
I think that's right.
Yeah,
I think that's right. Okay.
Okay.
Pick 20.
I'm gonna go for a rather inexperienced transfer over some returning starters because I think his ceiling would be higher. I'm gonna go Maryland.
Okay.
And Justin Martin, the transfer from UCLA, who I just thought played really well in his lone start last year on the road against a very good Penn State team. And I'm excited to see what that looks like extrapolated over the course of an entire season, playing for Mike Loxley in an offense and Pep Hamilton's there they hired as the OC, right?
Yep. And
like an offense leaning program that I think is going to bring out some of Justin Martin's better attributes. I think he's got dual threat capability too. So I actually thought Maryland got pretty good quarterback play last year from Billy Edwards, all things being considered. but could perhaps even get better quarterback play this year out of Justin Martin.
Okay. I think that is a good pick. I'm going to go, this is a little bit of a Raiola pick. Good start, fell off a cliff. Not sure what to think, but I'll take Eli Holstein and Pitt.
Yeah. No idea what to think.
No idea what to think. So good early on. He threw 3 touchdown passes in each of his first 5 games. So in his first 5 games that he played, he had 15 touchdown passes and 3 picks. The last 6 games he played, he had 2 touchdown passes and 4 picks. He was hurt a lot. Mm-hmm. He was getting banged around, including with some concussion stuff. But the whole offense, the quarterback play, the offense, the team fell off a cliff. They started 7-0. They finished 0-6. It was the first year for the offensive coordinator, Cade Bell. We've talked about this before. They were a little bit of like a go fast, score at all costs offense that I think wore down the offense and the defense over the course of the season. They also had some offensive line injuries that really hurt them. Branson Taylor, the left tackle, got hurt. That you understand some of that stuff. So I think part of the reason that everything fell apart was self-inflicted. I think some of it was bad luck, much of that injury luck. I think there are some lessons to be learned there. But Eli Holstein came in as the Alabama transfer, won that job in the preseason. Nate Yarnellish did a pretty good job as a backup. He's transferred, but like went through the meat grinder kind of. And so again, hey, like if Eli Holstein had sat all year behind Nate Yarnell and they were like, Eli Holstein was like a 4-star recruit at Alabama. He's now in his 3rd year of college football. I think he's ready to be good, except he had he earned the opportunity to show us his faults. So now all of a sudden he's 21st, but I still like Pitt's quarterback situation.
I am very nervous about Pitt's quarterback situation. I think it makes sense still to pick him where you picked him, but it was one of those things where like, I'll just let you pick Pitt wherever you want to pick him.
Okay.
I'm not going to pick it. Yeah.
But as opposed to like, I have no idea what they're going to do. We know what they're going to do, and we've seen it work at times.
Yeah. Yes.
So that's not like up in the air. It's maybe you're not sure of it, but at least we know what they're going to try to do. There's a plan. This is their plan. It's a plan.
There's a plan. Yeah. And I think another team that clearly has a plan, you can, I guess tell me what you think of what the ceiling of the plan is. But like we know, Ethan McCallie is going to be Rutgers starting quarterback this year, and I thought. Yep. I thought he was better at Rutgers than he was at Minnesota, and I guess maybe that's enough to ask for in his first year in the Rutgers offense. And like this year is going to be more about him because they're losing Kyle Monungai, they're losing some offensive line pieces. Like I think they're going to be a team that's going to have to throw the ball perhaps more and certainly more effectively than it did this past year. He's got a strong arm. He's pretty athletic. Definitely still has the volatility in him that I think. Kind of made the relationship in Minnesota run its course a little bit, but there were enough flashes I thought last year too. It's like this guy's got some stuff to him, so I'll take Rutgers and Kelly McManus.
And I think there's a little bit of a line here. I think there's still a couple teams left that have plans, but their plans are guys who like really haven't played and that kind of thing. So I would draw a line here, and I will take Drake Lindsey in Minnesota. And this
what's your confidence level that he's going to be the starter?
And who's the Virginia Tech guy?
Georgia Tech, Zach Pyron.
Georgia Tech, right? Pretty high confidence. Pyron a role, right? A little bit of a wrinkle QB, a little bit of that third, run option. Who also isn't run only, right? And that's the other thing. It's like if you could be like, I mean, like what I said, what Damon Williams was last year, what JJ McCarthy was the year before, but this is different. It's like the young guys playing and the more veteran guys, the wrinkle, but also that's good, right? That it's not all, but I thought Max Brosmer as the starter last year as a transfer, Drake Lindsey as a true freshman, that is the future, learning from him, a lot of stuff on social media, like they had a good relationship. Lindsey, I think, really did learn a lot, but this is Minnesota's plan. They had a plan in the room last year. This is following their plan, but then they also brought in a power conference guy with some starting experience to be a little bit of a backstop / wrinkle / guy in the room. I think, again, like I feel fine about Minnesota's quarterback situation. Maybe even good, right? Because if Lindsey's not ready, then Pyron can play. He's played. So I still think this, to me, very much is in the good situation. Like the good enough.
Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. I will go take. I guess I'll take Boston College.
Okay.
A great Grayson James coming back, Dylan Lonergan in the mix, like, is interesting. I don't think Grayson James is like an especially good quarterback. I think he's fine and more stable than Thomas Castellanos was, and I think that's clearly preferable for Bill O'Brien. I don't think Grayson James is the guy who's going to go out there and like win you a bunch of games you're not supposed to win. But I guess there's something to be said for stability and a reasonable floor. And then like Lonergan's a bit of a wild card, like similar situation to Eli Holstein. They went to Alabama together. Neither one of them really played. Lonergan's making the move a year after Holstein did, but like maybe there's something there. Bill O'Brien is familiar with him, so I guess I'll take the familiarity of James with the maybe the plus upside of Lonergan and take Boston College.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think this has a potential to work out quite well. I think probably Grayson James is like a backup plus.
Yes,
really, if he's your backup and you need him to play, I think you feel really good about it. If he is your plan as the starting quarterback, you're probably putting a ceiling on things. Mm-hmm. But last year, when it went south with Thomas Castellanos, he was ready. And if Lonergan's not ready, okay. But the Lonergan part of this is the more interesting part of this, right? Yes. Like that's this could really maybe be a thing a little bit.
Yeah. We'll see. I think that feels to me like a scenario where I guess Lonergan could win the job outright coming out of camp, but that'll be like an ongoing story, I think, of like when is Dylan Lonergan going to be ready to take over?
Okay. I'll take the last one where we absolutely, I think, could be 1,000% wrong on this. And I'll take Preston Stone at Northwestern. Preston Stone got passed by Kevin Jennings last year, and then Kevin Jennings led SMU to the playoff. But Preston Stone at SMU in 2023 had 28 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He had 30 big-time throws and 13 turnover-worthy plays. He had some games at the end of the year where the last game against Navy in 2023, he threw for 322 yards and 3 touchdowns.
They won a conference championship that year, right?
He's been really good at times.
Yeah.
Like he's been a good year-long starter. He's been good. And then like Kevin Jennings just gave him more last year. And for Northwestern, it's like a miracle. This is a great job in the transfer portal to get this guy. And I think Preston Stone could wind up being the 11th best quarterback in the North. I think this is probably too low for him, but this is still in the set. They're good to go. They still have Jack Lausch. Jack Lausch is playing baseball right now, but he was the quarterback last year. He's a young guy. Kind of, I think, wasn't quite ready. So they bring in a transfer. Lausch is a backup who's maybe still part of the future. Great. But Preston Stone has been a dude, right?
I like him. I wanted to like not take the Northwestern quarterback like 16th, but yeah. I really like Preston Stone. I liked him last year when I thought he was going to be the quarterback that got SMU to a surprising ACC championship. He got hurt at the end of the 2023 season, and I think probably has not quite been the same guy since then. But there's some skill there, and I don't like who's the last like decent Northwestern quarterback that you can name, like Peyton Ramsey.
Peyton Ramsey is an Indiana transfer that led him to the Big Ten title game. Yeah.
So that was 2020 in the COVID year, right? So, Preston Stone's better than
Autogram.
Yeah, Preston Stone's better than Peyton Ramsey at least. I don't know if he's better than Autogram. Yeah.
So anyway, I would draw another line here. Again, I know we have there's somebody from Northwestern who's watching this is like, I can't believe you picked Preston Stone 25th. He should have been 13th. You might be right.
Yes.
You might be right. But this is I still think we are in the big healthy middle. Honestly, between about 6 and 25, I think there's a lot of room for, I know what you're doing. I think it's going to work to a pretty decent degree, and good job having a quarterback plan for 2025. We are 25 deep, and that is the category we are in. I am not doubting Preston Stone and Northwestern at all. I am not doubting that BC is probably going to figure out a decent way to have okay quarterback play. I'm not doubting Minnesota. I'm not doubting Rutgers. I'm not doubting Pitt. I think they're all in pretty good shape.
I think they are. Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. But I would put, there's 3 teams left. I would put one team by itself and then the other. Maybe all 3 are kind of in separate tiers, but I don't think they're all 3 are the same.
Okay. So who are you taking 26 then?
West Virginia.
Okay. Nico Marchiol, 4 career starts, including a couple last year for Garrett Green. New QB and new head coach and Rich Rodriguez. I think some people maybe thought when he came in that Marchiol would be out, but he's not. And so there's no reason not to assume this. And this is a guy who's been being groomed to take over for Garrett Green for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess they could go through spring ball and then see if there's something else out there for them. But like people in West Virginia, I think have been excited about Nico Marchiol for 3 years.
Yes.
Now maybe he hasn't probably flashed when given the opportunity quite the way people hoped that he would. But I think he can run this offense with Rich Rodriguez. I think he's got the required kind of dual threat ability that the Rich Rod's going to want out of his quarterback, and he's got some tools and he's got more size anyway than Garrett Green did. So like I don't know, I think it could work. It's not a guarantee, which is why we're picking it 26th, but I certainly feel better about that situation than I do the 2 remaining ones we haven't picked yet.
Okay, so 27th I'll take Syracuse and Ricky Collins, right? Is that we're assuming who it's going to be?
I guess so. There's no college starts in that room.
There are not, but he is an LSU transfer who had a big recruiting pedigree, was the 3rd string quarterback at LSU, I think, the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So this is like, it's a transfer thing. It could not be more different than Kyle McCord transfer thing, but it's a shot. Maybe they'll wind up with another veteran somehow in this room, but it's a decent recruiting pedigree, just no experience. But I get what they're doing, but I kind of maybe thought they would add a guy like this and somebody from like a group of 5 program who had made some starts.
It is interesting to me that they weren't able, like, because I think they were interested in Mendoza, they were interested in Salter, those 2 for sure. And what Kyle McCord did this past year, like
kind of Wegman, we thought,
who went to Houston, like, I don't know what that quarterback.
They kept Jeff Nixon, the offensive coordinator, who was interviewing for some NFL jobs. Like this is.
I'm not entirely sure what that quarterback market's going to look like post spring, but if it's even reasonably good, I think Syracuse will be involved in it. Because Ricky Collins was a 4-star prospect, was going to go to Purdue, play for Jeff Brom, then he went to LSU and didn't play a whole lot there. So the recruiting pedigree is there. He just hasn't, like, I don't know what to make of him because he hasn't played in 2 years at LSU.
So it's a little bit of a tough spot for that. And then so that leaves us. But do you group these last 2 together? Like Marchiol is much more established than these last 2. Like
I would say Marchiol in West Virginia is a tier by itself, and then these last 2, it's just like I don't know. You have guys, and then I think you're both going to be hoping that somebody pops on the portal after spring practice.
Okay, so you're taking Purdue last.
Purdue last, yeah. I would assume Malachi Singleton from Arkansas. Another, like, not dissimilar from Ricky Collins, like fairly highly rated prospect coming out of high school. Has not played a whole lot. He's appeared in 5 games. He's actually pretty efficient. He's 21 of 28 passing in those 5 games, but nothing like super high leverage, nothing to really bank on to think like, oh, I wonder if this guy can make Purdue something other than a team that will struggle to win 3 or 4 games. So we'll see. I was really hoping for that extra bonus year for Hodge Malik Williams from UNLV, but it didn't happen.
Yeah, but they brought in 3 quarterback transfers plus Barry Odom's kid, with all 3 have like varying levels of kind of connection to people on the staff in different ways. So they're going to get 3 swings at it here. So considering it's a complete revamp of the entire roster, they lost 30 guys in the portal. They fired the coach. Everybody's out. It's completely new. Barry Odom seems like a good hire. He has a plan. He brought some guys from UNLV, but he wasn't able to bring a quarterback. Like, I respect what they're trying to do here. It's just the most uncertain in a world where we feel we are 25 or 26 deep with, we know what you're doing. So they're one of the 2 that we're not exactly sure what they're doing, but we understand why they're not sure.
Yes.
So this is not like ripping Purdue, like, Purdue's a mess. It's like Purdue was a mess. And now they're trying to fix it, and they at least have a couple options led by Malachi Singleton. All right. We want to get out of here in under 2 hours because we don't like a 2 to start that show. 2 more things to do real quickly. Let's wrap up our northern groups of things so people understand this. Mike, let's show the graphic of transfers versus homegrown guys. This is just the thing where how you sort of go about doing this, right? And it's very evenly divided. New transfers for this year. Guys who are expected, we're anticipating will be the starter who arrived this year. Fernando Mendoza at Indiana. Mark Gronowski at Iowa. Those kind of guys. 10. Guys who previously transferred to their schools and are expected to be the starter this year. Luke Altmaier at Illinois. Julian Sayin at Ohio State. I know he was only out member for 15 days. It still counts. Like guys like that.
Sure.
Dante Moore at Oregon. Right? So the point is 10 guys are new. Boom, and of that group, I think 7 of the 10 are you're an established quarterback, and we don't have to teach you how to play quarterback. That's Fernando Mendoza, Mikey Keene. Again, Bryce Underwood, Mikey Keene could be in 2 different categories. I use Michigan in the transfer category. Mark Gronowski at Iowa, Preston Stone at Northwestern, Billy Edwards at Wisconsin, Caden Salter at Colorado, Devin Dampier at Utah. We don't have to teach you how to do this. And then 3 other transfers who are less experienced. Justin Martin at Maryland, Malachi Singleton, Purdue, Ricky Collins, Syracuse. Only 9 homegrown. This is the point. We recruited you out of high school, and now you're our quarterback, 1/3. Again, this is how this works. It's just to remind people this is how this works. So then it doesn't mean it's better. It doesn't mean, but I do want to give a little tip of the cap to Iowa State and Rocco Becht and Drew Allar and Penn State and Avery Johnson and Kansas State when your plan is that and is working to that degree. It's just not that common anymore.
It's not. And even at those places, when those guys cycle out, maybe they'll have to go over the portal too. It's just the way of doing business anymore. And if you're not looking there, then you're probably not doing your due diligence. So, but yeah, shout out to those guys for sticking around and developing for a couple of years.
This is just a point about starts. Who are the most veteran guys? That we have a group at the high end of guys who have really started a ton of games, and then a couple in the middle, and then a group of younger guys. 29 starts or more, 6 of the 28. Mark Gronowski, Jake Retzlaff, Mikey Keene, Jalen Daniels, Drew Allar, Ethan Kaliak-Manis are those 6. We have 8 guys at the bottom who have started between 0 and 4 games, and then 14 guys in the middle. So your quarterback, we have a big healthy middle, about a starter for a year or 2. We have 8 out of 28 who really haven't done it before, and we have 6 guys who have kind of been around forever. So this is just to contextualize again how everybody goes about it with their quarterback. And what's the last one, Mike? I can't even remember. I made 3 graphics, but I can't remember. Oh, the years in college. This is how long you've been around. We're not projecting any first-year starters. Bryce Underwood might be, but I didn't put him on this list. We have 2 guys who have been around 6 years, Mark Gronowski at Iowa, Jalen Daniels at Kansas. 8 who will be in their 5th year, 6 in their 4th year, 7 in their 3rd year. Hey, that's that 3rd-year pop, right? That can really be it. And only 5 guys who were expecting to start in year 2, which was what we got burnt by a little bit last year. But this is Julian Sayin, Dylan Raiola, this kind of stuff. Okay. Do you want to do Southern quick draft? There's not that many that scare me. Southern quarterbacks who maybe should have the North a little worried. So it's if you want to take Diego Pavia, they can talk about it on Saturday Down South all year. Vanderbilt's not scaring anybody in the North. I'm not taking him. That's not the point of this exercise to me. To me, these are Southern quarterbacks that our Northern fan base should be aware of because they might beat a Northern team in the playoff. Right? That's a little bit of how I'm thinking about it, Landis.
Sure.
So I'll give you the first pick on this. We're going to pick 6.
Okay. I'll take Arch Manning at Texas.
Oh, why? Who's that guy? He's so famous.
Yeah.
What? You just love the Manning so much because Peyton Manning was on the SNL show and made a joke about retiring?
Yes.
Is he definitely? But this is the point. This is just the point. If you're a little oh man, the top of the North, this is not a ton of huge dudes. Arch Manning, who has never played.
Some pretty good players. There's some pretty good players.
He's never played, and he's the number 1 pick. I'm just saying, it's not Caleb Williams. It's not Trevor Lawrence.
He made a start last year. He
made
2
1
starts
start
last year.
But you know what I'm saying? It's not. I'll take Cade Klubnik, number 2 at Clemson.
Yeah, that's right. He's
is
good.
That right?
I think he's turned the corner and is good.
That's possible. So be aware of Clemson. Right. But this is he was a high recruit. He's played a ton and he might be ready to be something. That's real. That's
you
real.
ready for
All right.
You ready for Swerve?
Swerve.
Sam Leavitt, Arizona State.
Yeah. You love that guy. That's okay. Arizona State counts. They're not us. So this is anybody that's not us is eligible for this. But that's legit. But again, Sam Leavitt, nobody's I can't wait to see Sam Leavitt be the number 1 pick in the draft. Right. And he's 3rd on this list. I just want to keep reinforcing to people, don't be scared. Right? Don't be scared.
Okay.
I pass. I don't know. Do I have to do this? Why do I make myself do this?
It's your idea, man.
I know. I don't find it enjoyable. I'll take
Yeah.
Garrett Nussmeier, and I swear to God, it's the last time I'm going to say that name on this show until LSU is playing a Northern team in the playoff. Garrett Nussmeier, he is nussy as all get out. He'll nuss you up. He'll nuss you down. He'll nuss you left. He'll nuss you right. Just when you think he's not nussing you no more, he'll nuss you. So be careful. That's all.
Watch your back.
Is he Doug Nussmeier's kid?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
There can't be. Nussmeier cannot be. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we'd had like a 45-minute discussion about how like I was wrong about Peter Sarsgaard or whatever. So like
those were different names though. That was Skarsgård and Sarsgaard.
But maybe this is a Nussmeier and a Nussmeier. I don't know. I don't know about these people down south.
It's fair. Okay. I'll take Carson Beck.
Okay.
In Miami.
Which is like actually a thing. But again, part of the deal last
said that Carson Beck had no help at Georgia.
He had no help. So like that's like, what are we doing now with Georgia? Like how the excuse making? I can't. We're going to talk ourselves in a circle about all this stuff. So again, now Carson Beck, who had a Lamborghini but no skill players at Georgia, now he's going to go to Miami, where Miami couldn't make the playoff with a guy who might be the number one pick in the draft.
Yeah.
Cam Ward worked out as well as it possibly could. Miami didn't make the playoffs. So, like, I don't know. So now this is going to be better. So I'll take this one. I actually believe in. I'll take Lenora Sellers from South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I actually think that, like, South Carolina is actually probably going to make the playoff and be a team that Northern fans might have to know about. So they're going to beat Alabama for sure this year.
I think so. Can I give you a couple other names just so we can give the lay of the land? Like DJ Lagway at Florida, I think is going to be very good. I just don't know that Florida is going to be good. Kevin Jennings, who you mentioned at SMU, is back.
Yep.
John Mateers,
who also threw 14 interceptions against Penn State, a playoff game. But
he did. John Mateer is at Oklahoma. He's exciting. We like him. Jackson Arnold, your guy, is at Auburn.
Yep.
And I think another one maybe worth considering is Miller Moss getting away from Bambi and going to Louisville.
Okay, that could be a real thing. I was at Disney World. They had a topiary of Bambi. That means a bush.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to take a photo of me in front of the Bambi bush and then tweet it out on the account and say, I met Lincoln Riley at Disney World. But I was like, I don't need to do that. That's too much, right? Although Rob Ryan can be Thumper. That'd be good. Like, he's a little.
Did you take a photo? Do you have it in the arsenal to pull out during the season when USC?
I don't know. This is one of those things where it's like I end up having like 45-minute conversations in my head about things that should be a snap decision, a split-second decision. And I might have had a 45-minute conversation with myself about whether I should take a picture with the Bambi bush and then not done it. When actually it would have cost me nothing to do it. So I think I didn't take it. I think I was like, no, I'm not going there. I'm just going to talk about college football. All right, that's it. Sorry, we went 2 hours. Wow, this is long. This is a lot of quarterback talk, though, right? It's important. Yeah. Plus, we haven't been on we didn't do a show for 6 days.
You were on a bus for
Nico. We didn't say Nico. What about Nico from Tennessee? Producer Mike points out.
Yeah, he's fine.
You weren't scared when Tennessee came to Columbus? No?
You're good? Sure wasn't. Yeah. No.
Okay.
He did pick him, Mike. He did pick him, though.
That's true.
Win.
Yeah. But then it turned
out. I watched the game.
We learned. No Nico. So anyway, but my point is, if you like, we want to make sure we add context when it matters. If you went through our 28 and we're like, I don't know. Like, again, Garrett Nussmeier is not, it's not like we would have gone Garrett Nussmeier, Arch Manning, Nico Iamaleava, Lenora Sellers, all ahead of Drew Allar, right? So, no, don't.
I don't know, man. I think we got to be honest about that one.
I think it is a big, healthy group of Northern quarterbacks. It does not have the top end like it often has, right? Like CJ Stroud was returning, right?
Yeah.
Like if we knew Dylan Gabriel coming in with the career he had a year, it would definitely have been number one on this list if he was doing that now at Oregon, right? So we understand that. But also, I'm just telling you, I don't think the South is filled with Bryce Youngs and Trevor Lawrences. I just don't. Like they're fine, but
I don't know that there are Bryce Youngs and Trevor Lawrences in the sport. I think I would say that if you want to do top ends, north versus south or north versus non-north, I think non-north has better quarterback play at the top. You want to go another hour?
If it is, I don't think it's a huge gap. I think they may be a little ahead. And by the time we get to like number 9, I think we're good. Like, I think the 9th best quarterback in the North might be the 9th, better than the 9th best quarterback in the non-North, or the 14th best. Cause I think we're good, like 6 through 26.
We should have this conversation at a time when the show is not already 2 hours and 4 minutes in.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, everybody. Listen, people watch that SNL thing for like 3.5 hours. You can watch 2 hours of quarterback talk.
That's true.
We'll be back on Thursday this week. We're going Tuesday and Thursday this week. And then we'll probably get back to that Monday, Wednesday schedule. We want to give you 2 shows a week. And then if something really super pops, we'll bring you an extra one of those. But for now, we always appreciate you guys being part of it. Thanks as always to producer Mike for doing what he does, making us look good, sound good, and keeping us in bounds for now. He's Bill Landis. Sorry it went long. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.